I'm being interviewed again, and I must say to both the camera and to Tatiana that being interviewed is a pleasure because, as I was telling her, it's very much like having a very good auditor who gives you a chance to look at things and communicate and to cognite and to rehabilitate old moments of pleasure and understanding. And so far it's been a wonderful experience, and I give her great credit, my interviewer, for making it easy for me to be interviewed. All right, so I thought today that I would mention the year 1950, because that was the year that Dianetics, the book, became a national bestseller. But I'd like to mention what the world of 1950 was looking like. Okay? So, 1950 was 5 years after the end of World War II. And large amounts of Europe were still in ruins. I mean, major cities had been destroyed, reduced to rubble. And it was a long way yet to go before they were rebuilt. And parts of Japan were completely wiped out. And tens of millions of people had been killed. In Russia alone, 22 million died just simply because Adolf and company invaded Russia. It's hard to imagine 22 million people. That's a lot of bodies. And Germany lost 16 million, and I mean, I could go on, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 100 million people died from 1939 to 1945. Try to imagine 90, 80, 100 million people, regular people, human beings, died in 6 years. Okay? So that was the world, 1950. 5 years later, the ghosts and the death and the blood and the horror and the damage was far from being repaired. Also in the field of mental health, what was available in 1950? Well, shock treatment was very popular, electroconvulsive shock therapy. You could go to see almost any number of psychiatrists and they'd sign you up for 10 shock treatments if you were feeling depressed or disturbed or something. It was sort of right on the corner. It wasn't just people in insane asylums that were getting shock treatment. Ordinary people were thinking, well, I've been worried lately, I'll get some shock treatment, maybe I'll feel better. So a lot of people actually did that, at least in this country. And shortly thereafter, another very popular psychiatric idea came in, which was to sever with a knife, a dull knife, the frontal lobes of the human brain. And that was a very drastic procedure, and it usually left people in a condition that you really wouldn't want to be in. Having the frontal lobes of your brain completely severed was not only unpleasant, but left you lacking a lot of the things that we consider would be normal in a human being. Psychology and psychoanalysis did not have a great deal to offer at that time. Sometimes a friendly ear could be helpful, but as Ron had pointed out, psychoanalysis could involve 4 years or 8 years, could cost a lot of money, and the results were not determinable for sure. And so Dianetics burst on the scene, claiming that a very simple understanding for most of man's mental and to some degree physical problems could be explained. And at first, the popularity of the book was so great that even a number of people in the medical and mental professions were interested in it. But it also became obvious after a while that if that book was correct, then psychiatry, psychology, and psychoanalysis were a waste of time. And if you had spent 12 years getting your medical degree and your psychoanalytical degree, only to find out that 25 or 50 hours of Dianetics could do more than you could do in 8 or 10 years, you might have decided that Hubbard is a dangerous man with some dangerous ideas, and we have to prove that he is full of baloney, malarkey, shit, if you will. And whatever it takes, he is the worst thing to come along in the mental therapy business that we've known of for maybe a century. Because if what he says can be done, and it can be done by people who don't have to become doctors, they don't have to get advanced degrees in psychology, they don't have to spend 4 years learning to psychoanalyze people, our business, our lives, our identities are being threatened. And you know what happens, you listeners, when anybody threatens your own identity. As a human being, you are built to repel such attacks, to harm what is attacking you, and if necessary, destroy it so that your own survival can continue. But when you attack a person's profession, their livelihood, their sense of being important in the world, it was not surprising that the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association, and the American Psychiatric Association and other associations went on the attack and decided to get the scalp of L. Ron Hubbard. So I just wanted to point that out because that is the way it was in 1950. It wasn't like it is now. There weren't many options of mental and physical therapy and spiritual possibilities that were around. They were limited, and they were controlled and monopolized by both doctors of the mind and body. So I just wanted to make that point. Now, when someone wants to play a game with you and become your opponent, hopefully you have the choice of whether to play or not. And sometimes it's very hard, if you're under attack, not to start playing the game that your attacker is playing. And so you get into this thing where your attacker is trying to destroy you or diminish you or unmock you or bring you down, and you're fighting for survival, and at the same time you take on the same goal or characteristic, which is to destroy, to minimize, to unmock, and to diminish that which is attacking you in the hopes of winning the game. Of course, the game can go on endlessly. It can seem to end and not really end, and then burst into life all over again. So Ron, at least the Ron that I knew in 1952 and first got to know more intimately by 1957, was not going to get into games or games conditions because everyone on the planet was seen as someone that if they wished to be helped by Dianetics and or Scientology, they were welcome to receive that help. No enemies. Pan-determinism. However, if you pick up the game with an opponent and you now have a goal to destroy your opponent, the opponent has a goal to destroy you, to a great degree, like it or not, Hubbard has said it, but in practice I found that it's true, games are aberrative because you are trying to destroy your fellow creatures, even though they may have taken on the cloak of the enemy and they are trying to destroy you. And the longer and harder you fight to destroy them, and the more your intentions are to bring them down, to prove that they're weak and incapable, and all of those different things, the crazier you get, the longer you keep doing that. Take Germany during World War II. It was declared by the Führer that there were all kinds of people that should be thought of as Untermenschen, people who were not quite human. The Jews, the Gypsies, and of course the Slavic people were also Untermenschen, under people. And therefore, killing them and harming them would be more like killing animals, like we slaughter sheep and cattle and pigs. So if you were killing Jews, it was the same as killing rats, mice, vermin. If you were killing Russians, you were killing a Slavic people who in their brutal, low way were not really human. Of course, the people that assume those ideas about their fellow human beings become the very thing that they're hating and destroying. They become brutal, they become less human, they become inhuman, and they destroy themselves in the process of destroying their fellow human beings. I'm sure everyone hearing this already knows that, but that's one of the liabilities of games. The impulse to play games among survival species is very high because a game consists of opponents and fighting with a prize, something you can win at the end, like you can conquer the world, or you can win the tennis match, or you can win your best friend's husband or wife. There's the impulse to play games for human beings, and perhaps spiritual beings too, is enormous. And at the moment we are living in something that might be called, perhaps not correctly, but might be called a games universe. There may be universes below games, there may be universes above games. That's nothing I can really speak on or prove, but I can see that on this planet, in this species called human beings or Homo sapiens, there is an extraordinary and ongoing impulse to create and play games. Okay? I'll take a short break here for a moment.